Welcome to Cookies Maths and Science Hub. Today, you'll be learning how to sketch quadratics on the Cartesian plane. Sometimes in mathematics, you'll be asked to sketch quadratics and other functions on the Cartesian plane. There are several strategies and tips that you can use to find the different parts of a quadratic and sketch it on the quadratic plane. Now, for this, we use the same formula, ax squared plus bx plus c. Remembering from our introduction to quadratics that a quadratic is shown as either a U or an N shape on the Cartesian plane. So, how do we find what that shape is? Well, if our a value, that is the value at the start of our equation, is greater than 0, then it will be U-shaped. This is known as concave up. If our a value is less than 0, then it'll be N-shaped, concave down. Now, I've had people ask me before, what if a is equal to 0? Well, then it's not a quadratic because that x squared value doesn't exist, and it is simply a linear equation. Our c value allows us to find the y-intercept. Much like a linear equation, that plus c tells us where our line crosses the y-axis. To find where our line crosses the x-axis, you have to solve the quadratic. This is solving the quadratic either through factorization or through the quadratic formula. These are known as the roots of the quadratic. You then need to complete the square to find the vertex. This is what's known also as the turning point of the quadratic and is where the curve either turns around to go back up or turns around to come back down, depending whether it's concave down or concave up. Below, I've provided some diagrams that show what these different terms are and where you will find them on a drawing of a quadratic on a Cartesian plane. So the one on the left being concave down and the one on the right being concave up, where their vertexes, y-intercepts and roots are. So without further ado, let's have a go at drawing one ourselves. So we're asked to solve x squared plus 7x plus 6 equals 0 and sketch. So looking at our values, we have a is equal to 1, b is equal to 7, and c is equal to 6, which straight away tells us that our y-intercept is 6. I'm going to put a dot on the chart to the left where that will be. Now, as I said before, I prefer the quadratic formula than factorization, so I'm just going to plug all my numbers in, which will give me my x values, or my roots, equal to -6 or -1. So now I know that it's going to cross the x-axis at -6 and -1. So I'll place some dots on the chart there to indicate where that is. Final step is to find our vertex. So we have to complete the square. So my b over 2 squared value is 49 over 4. So I will place that into my equation. So we have x squared plus 7x plus 49 over 4, subtracting 49 over 4, as to balance it out we need to subtract it as well, plus 6. Now in this case I'm going to convert them into decimals because I find it easier to work with the decimals when I'm then drawing the quadratic. So I will have x plus 3.5 squared, subtract 6.25. So that is completing the square and then adding the different terms that are outside that square. This gives me my two terms for my vertex, the x term being within the brackets, so -3.5, and the y term being outside the brackets, in this case being -6.25. So that gives me 4 points of my quadratic. I can then use those points where I have my roots, -6 and -1, my vertex, and my y-intercept. With my a value being greater than 0, I know it's going to be curved up. So then I just need to draw a parabola, or the curve of the quadratic, through those dots, and I have sketched my quadratic. Let's look at a second example now. We have -x squared plus 4x plus 12 is equal to 0. So we know a is equal to -1, b is equal to 4, and c is equal to 12, giving us our y-intercept of 12 straight away. Plugging those numbers into the quadratic formula, I get out x is equal to 6 or x is equal to -2. Then I need to solve my vertex. So in this case, my b over 2 squared is 4 over 2 squared, which equals 4. I'm then going to take the -1 out, just to make it a little easier to solve for our equation. Just by removing -1 and taking that factor out of everything. So if you see, our positives have become negatives, and our negatives have become positives. That gives us -1, and then in brackets, x squared, take 4x, plus 4, subtract 4, take 12, which gives us -1, and then in brackets, x minus 2 squared, minus 16. Then removing the brackets for that 16 term, because that sits outside of it, we can have -1 multiplied by x minus 2 squared plus 16, which gives us our vertex of 2, 16, or our x value is 2 from the brackets, and our y value is 16 from outside the brackets. Once more, we have our 4 points that I have now plotted on the chart, and we can connect them with a parabola to show our quadratic equation on the chart, with roots of 6 and -2, a y-intercept of 12, and a vertex of 2, 16. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you can now sketch quadratics well on the quadratic plane. Be sure to check out our other videos on quadratics or our summary of everything you need to know about quadratics. Hope to see you again soon.